So I think you have had a very interesting perspective from different speakers on how they are dealing with the challenges that are faced by technology, both at the company level, at an industry level. And what would be good now is to try and bring you in directly into this conversation. And I'd like to encourage you to ask your questions, and we'll try and get maybe 3 or 4 questions and then come back to the panelists and then go back out again to make it more interactive. So let me start with the lady in the first row, then I'm going to go to the gentleman in the third row, and then we will take it from there. So if you could please bring a microphone to the lady in the first row.
Hello, my name is Iman. I think we had a very live panel speaking today. I will have just one, it's a comment, and then a question, then a doubt. The comment says that the CEO of Nokia, when they were about to close down, he had a small statement to his employee. He said, "We have done nothing wrong except that we do not change." And Nokia now is not known anymore, especially to our new kids. The second thing is that was my comment, that there's no, if we don't accept the changes, they will vanish. That's the statement and the message. But then, and a few months from Brexit exit to the United States election, there was another shocking message that people refuse to change. And the new word is either support Donald Trump, the person who brought a new change, and the Brexit exit. And the reason that they've been elected and the reason that the United Kingdom, United States, refused the changes. The people refused through the election, the free world election. They refused the changes, and the most changes refused was by elderly, non-educated, people who have lost their jobs. People were affected with globalization, the changes of the new world. Now, my doubt, how would the speakers elaborate with the new generation saying that the changes is good, but the people who elect in democracy countries refuse to do the change? How would you speak to them? Thank you.
Hello. My name is Chul from Korea. I was a former public official, and now I'm president of the Overseas Korean Foundation. I was very much impressed with the expose by different speakers. And because of this fast change and because of the delay of adaptation and difficulties, really a lot of challenges are there. And, but our social contract or our labor union, for example, try to resist any necessity of reform and change. And government sector also tries to bring some new reform and restructuring, but sometimes they don't understand the gravity of the situation. And the leaders also fall back in tackling these issues, and that creates the gap, and that leads up to the political problem that we see today, potentially. My question is how the organizations such as OECD and ILO, even the international labor unions organizations take these issues seriously and study and embark on efforts to educate people, political leaders, other social leaders, NGOs, and the labor union people for the better of the entire society. So my question is about education, what the international organization is doing about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'll take one more question from that gentleman over there, Mr. Dadush.
Yeah, Uri Dadouche from Washington, D.C. I have a question actually for Sébastien Bazin. I'm very interested when you say that we're going to see a lot of change that will affect your employees. Where you see the change, because I assume in a hotel chain like yours, you have a lot of people who do things that are not going to be replaced by robots or computers or whatever, and others that are. So if you could give us some kind of your view of the distribution of where this burden will fall, I'd be very interested in that.
Thank you very much, Uri. We have 3 questions, and if I may, I don't see anybody's hand up, add a question of my own, and before turning back to the panelists. And I guess my question is that I think what all of you have pointed out is that there is a transformation in societies that is happening because of technology in different ways. And some companies, some people will do remarkably well from it. Other sectors, other companies, other people will be impacted negatively, and they will try to adapt. Some will adapt well, some will not adapt well. This process will take a decade, if not more, depending on where you are, which sector, which country. How do you bring about a conversation at the societal level that will create the most harmonious conditions for managing such a existential transformation? Because if you are in booking.com, to take Sébastien's example, they don't see why they should be worrying about the social contract as it affects the employees of the hotel industry. And if you're in your industry, you're simply managing your problem. But how do you create the societal discussion that would bring about a new social contract that recognizes this new reality, but also recognizes the inherent and quite complex difficulties of surmounting these problems without resulting in the kind of rejection that is only something that can hold back the flood for a while, but it cannot change the course of the water. So let me add that question, if I may, and I'd like to just go down in order and ask each of you to address any of the questions that have come to you. So I'll start with you, Toby.
From you. The challenge is more that organizations are guided by profits more and more, because you have the financial sector, the private equity funds, the venture capital coming into play, and they are extremely conscious of the return that they are making. So when it comes to decentralization of any sort of wealth, you see increasingly that people who have higher skills in organizations are paid much more, a multiple which is probably maybe 100 times, 200 times more, and nobody complains about it. So who is able to regulate this? I think only governments can. So, if you tell companies to do that, I think it would be very difficult. It's be a very onerous ask of them. To answer your question about the politics of it, again, if you see the reason why President-elect Trump won, or what happened in Brexit, is more because of a lack of trust. People are increasingly fed up with organized structures, and they just want a change. And whoever is able to even suggest a change, articulate it well, is finding success. I mean, how long it will last, we don't know. But it is something that is, let me say, the flavor of the season. whether it is in China, whether it is in Japan, whether it is in many parts of the world, you are seeing this, and we might continue to see it again in future.
Thank you very much, Toby.
Yeah. Is my mic on? Okay. I cannot answer all those three questions, but I'll try to answer how to bring about change. Okay? What's happening this 21st century now is that trust is distributed. The amount of trust is becoming less and less. And why we go to use Uber taxis and why do we go to Airbnb? Because we can have a trust, transparent, accountable, and inclusive, So we have some degree of a trust in these companies. So we use services they provide to us. But bring about trust is extremely difficult exercise. I studied the business for many years, and in this case, I suggest sort of a dictatorial management style to bring about change in your companies. South Korea has a number one company called Samsung. They make Galaxy cell phones and household electronics. It's a very diversified number one group. They even account for almost 25% of Korean GDP. It's number one, I would say, super company. The chairman of this company, about more than 10 years ago, asked his employees, change everything except your wife and kids. Okay? So that's how Samsung built up number one cell phones and electric equipment like that. One of their, CEO, he was quite dissatisfied with the old cell phones. He burned up virtually hundreds, thousands of cell phones in front of his plant workers. Okay, that was an extreme, shocking method to bring about quality control in Samsung electronics. So you need different types of management style in this case. Bring about big change, revolution, coup d'etat. Democratic ideas wouldn't work. So in my case, in my newspaper, I tell my journalists all the time, bring about new change, adapt to fourth industrial revolution, but cannot do that just sitting in Seoul, South Korea. So I happened to send one of my smart journalists to Silicon Valley, and now he's sending me some change and ideas. And last time he was running after Pokemon in Silicon Valley. And every January, in Las Vegas, they have a CES, right? And I'm going to bring many of my employees to CES to bring about new change. So I think we need to go to Silicon Valley, Bangalore, Hyderabad for new change. And we even talk to young kids. Sébastien said people less than 35 age. But I would say teenagers, they're the one who bring change this year, this time, okay? So another way of bringing in change to your company may be forcing your employees to read newspapers. Newspapers still deliver good ideas, and they can bring change, and they can give you ideas how new President-elect Donald Trump going to manage United States. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have a struggle trying to convince young people to read anything but the feed that only feeds them what they want to hear from likewise sources. Let me turn to Patrick next, please.
Yeah, I will just cover on the first question. One aspect I have not mentioned is mobility. And mobility goes both ways, so that would be a message to a younger generation. First, you bring people to work. It's one way that drives a lot of mobility. Then it all depends how protectionist it will be. You heard, for instance, the upcoming administration in the US saying they would limit the visa in the technology sector. But that will trigger the other movement of mobility, is where you bring work to people. I mean, if people cannot come to the work, today you can bring work to the people. So this is a different approach. This is the approach of centers, of factories, different kind of mode. But in any case, the location of this center will not be determined by where you live. So you will need mobility in one way or the other, and this will create movement, and it's another aspect of flexibility beyond the labor conditions. It's the mobility. If we kill this, then we are in big trouble. The second, your question, fourth, is what I advise across our organization is plan for disruption, execute for evolution. Because all these things we are changing cannot be addressed too much in a disruptive manner. There are ways, and I agree some authority is needed to force the change, but you have the population that you have. So, but if you don't plan for disruption, then you miss the point. That's, with the level of uncertainties that it contains.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And then let me go to Sébastien now, and including the question that I think Uri asked.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
I remember. The answer to your question is the following. Big companies like ours will not destroy jobs. Probably to the contrary, we're probably going to be continuing hiring people, and we open one-year hotel every 36 hours. So I employ another 20,000 people per year. The impact is not on the big chains. The impact is on the small, independently owned and run hotels, which is the vast majority of the hotel industry in the world. The only place when you have a majority of the chain market is the US. 70% in the hands of the 5 big guys. You take France, 70% of the French hotels are independently owned and run. You take Italy, 95% of the hotels in Italy are independent. And those independent hotels are lacking 3 or 4 things. They don't have technology, they don't have any money, and they don't have any expertise or talent vis-a-vis the new digital world. So each of them, a bit naive way, accepted too fast to be in the hands of the online travel agency, because for them it was a cheaper source, access to client. Except that today they are totally depending on them to the extent of 50, 60, 70% of occupancy in the hands of those big machines. Since the cost of commission went up dramatically for the last 5 years, in order for them to keep sustaining and pay the price of that commission, they have to no longer maintain the property the way it was maintained before, or they laid off the marketing director or the people in charge of the local sourcing. So since they cannot maintain the property, what's happening to them? TripAdvisors downgrade them. They're being downgraded, so they are on page number 5 or page number 20 of the booking engine, so occupancy goes down. So 20%, a third of the independent mom and pop hotels are closing basically over the next 5 years. And that is 1 job out of 10 in all the GDP of the major companies, of the major geographies. So you see it coming. The benefit for me is if they die, I'm going to be enhancing my market share. And before they die, they're probably going to be knocking on my door to be distributed by AccorHotel.com, to basically hide under my umbrella. But this is not the answer. And again, I'm not blaming Booking and Expedia. I wish we would have invented Booking and Expedia. I wish I would have invented Airbnb. But I'm just telling you, and which is even worse, 80% of the traffic goes in 300 cities in the world. 80% of the traffic goes on page number 1 and page number 2 of those websites. So if you happen to be in a tertiary cities on page number 20, you have very little hopes to survive. So, and to get back to you on your question, sir, on what do you do then, and how do you adapt? Well, there's two ways to look at it. The first way is all those new initiatives, be a participant, co-partner, invent one of your own, because you're going to have new Airbnb of the world, which is why we have our own autonomous lab, of which I'm hiring people to invent new product, new services away from a hotel room that companies never done before. We went into concierge digital, we went into One Fine Stay, which is private economy. So you need to expand your presence and your market share in something different from what you're accustomed to, which is difficult, but you can do it. The second is what you alluded to, Chairman Chang, and you're so correct. I keep saying it's between 25 and 35 years old, and they're very good. But I also know that those today between 5 and 15 will be far better than those today between 25 and 35 years old in 15 years. Not because they're smarter, but that new generation has something very defined. They have a predictability of the future, which is 20 times better than mine. Because if they want something which does not exist, they will create it. So in order for me to think like that new generation, you have to identify who are they in your own organization. And I have 60% of my people are underneath 35 years old, except they haven't been identified, they haven't been recognized, and you don't give them authority. So you have to identify them, you have to give them breathing room, oxygen, autonomy, and discretion, which is why I'm talking to you about culture. You have to get the elderly generation to accept that they waited 25 years to get direction. Well, we're not going to be imposing 25 years for the young people before he's going to get autonomy, otherwise he's going to be leaving you. So you need to basically have those two generations to talk to each other, where the young people respect the old because he has wisdom and experience, but when the old people accept to give power much sooner than he expected, probably in the next 2 to 3 years. So that dialogue between those two generations is indispensable.
All right, thank you very much. Well, this has really been a fascinating discussion. And I'd like, unless there's pressing questions, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of the panelists. And I'd like to ask each of you to go away with one question for yourself. And that is, we've got a glimpse of the nature of the societal transformation that lies ahead in each of our countries. In your own mind, how well prepared do you think your country, your society is to deal with this transformation? So on a scale of 0 to 10, would you say at the end of this conversation, you think that you are closer to 10, you're somewhere in the middle, or we haven't yet actually formulated the scale? So with that, I want to ask you to please thank the panelists.